Well, I use an analogy in the book, and I always worry about it because I think people think I might be dog whistling to physical violence. But sharks, it's going to turn out this isn't true, but you always hear that with sharks, you can bop them on the nose and they'll go away. Let's say that that's true. I compare these people to sharks. You have to bop them on the nose. Nobody bops them on the nose. Everybody just lets them bite.
Yeah.
But if you bop them on the nose and tell them, no, I don't think I'm a racist. You're not going to convince me otherwise. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm concerned with Black people too, just differently than you. Then you can watch them swim away. And when they swim away, and it strains the analogy, that shark is going to go right on Twitter that you're a white supremacist. And, for some people, that will be intolerable. If that would lose you your job and you have kids to feed, okay. But if really what it would be is that a few dozen people would say mean things about you on Twitter for about 5 days, you know what? It passes. And needless to say, I know that from experience and I see it with other people. And if you really know that you are doing good and you have a bit of a stomach, it passes. And I'm looking at it happening to other people because now people tell me about it. And sometimes it's more than 4 or 5 days, but often that kind of person, frankly, gets off on all the yelling and the screaming in the theater, and they enjoy showing one another that they are battling white power differentials by ostracizing the transgressor. But after a while, they do move on. Nobody wants to sit and do that for 3 or 4 years, except in the most egregious cases. And in the meantime, if that kind of person gradually learns that they can't get what they want by calling people white supremacists on Twitter, then they'll just sit back down to the table. And so I think that people need to realize, what do I need to do if I want to be a true ally to Black people? Everybody needs to get past the idea that being an ally means exempting Black people from standards because Jim Crow. That's ding dong reasoning. It's all about showing how goodly you are rather than helping the people. And so I outline at the end of the book, and I think some people think it's oddly terse and that I don't care, but no, I think that these 3 things would work. No war on drugs, foster vocational education, overturn the educational school orthodoxy that says that you teach kids to read by exposing them to a lot of print and teaching them to be creative rather than teaching them how to sound out letters. As wonky as that sounds, that does in an awful lot of poor Black kids from non-book-lined homes. Do those 3 things. Basically, make it so that, stop it, make it so that school works from the beginning. Make it so that if you don't want to go to college, you have vocational school waiting at the other end, and take away the temptation of making half of a living on the black market selling drugs by there being no such black market. That could turn Black America upside down in a generation, in part because if there is no war on drugs, there is about 90% less cops in your neighborhood. Most of the reasons that the cops over patrol underserved neighborhoods is either looking for drugs or things connected with drugs, guns, theft, addiction, etc. Take away the war on drugs and there'd be no reason for the cops to be in most of those neighborhoods most of the time. And so that would do an awful lot. I consider that to be very much allied with Black people who need help. Instead, you listen to certain usual suspects saying that what you really need to do to be an ally of Black people is to change our standards of what it is to be a responsible person, to change our standards of what it is to achieve, and to pretend that all of that makes sense, including allowing a certain kind of Black person to vastly exaggerate what racism is and what its effects are, to pretend that impact matters over intent, that if any Black person says that they feel any way about anything that anybody says, they must be listened to whether or not they're making sense. And you're supposed to walk off quietly thinking that Black people must not be very bright, but at least on the surface thinking that you've been an ally because you didn't make that person unhappy. None of this is treating us as adults. And so I think everybody ought to think, am I committed to some aspect of a real agenda? Maybe mine is too terse. Maybe you have other things, but not this new business of anti-racism being changing standards. No, that has never worked. And just because somebody advises it who has dreadlocks and wears a suit at the same time, that's not a reason that they're right. You listen to the reasoning. Don't let that person scare you. And that's what I'm urging in the book.